Welcome to the Next Gen CMO podcast, where we sit down with seasoned CMOs and emerging talents in sales and marketing to explore the wins and occasional losses that shape today's leaders and the strategic maneuvers that can help propel you to the forefront of B2B marketing.
All right, everybody. Welcome to our Next Gen CMO podcast. Today, I'm super excited to welcome my friend Dave Gerhardt to the podcast. If you don't know Dave, which I'm sure you do, or you at least follow him, or at least read his stuff, or you're at least a part of his community, he is the founder of Exit 5, which is a large community for B2B marketers. So prior to starting that, he was the CMO at Privy and the chief brand officer at Drift. And he's worked all over this marketing and go-to-market space for a long time. So we're super excited to have him, super excited to ask all about his career and about lessons he's learned along the way. So welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Yeah. Hey, Kelly. Thanks for having me. That was a kind background. I love talking about marketing. And I think I'm a fan of yours now because you connected me with two amazing CMOs. We did this event in Austin. And so any opportunity that I can pay it back because you made me look great with two of the CMOs that we got in Austin. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with you and chatting and seeing where this goes.
I saw that. So I saw Megan was one, right? Leadership note afterwards, and I saw her flash through on a promo on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
She was able to do it.
Yeah, and Kim was the other one.
Oh, Kim Story.
Kim Storin, yeah. So it's funny is there's like a mini marketing lesson in this is the two of them, neither of them knew who I was or what we were doing. They're in your community down in Austin area, both like $1 billion company CMOs.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy's asked me to speak at an event. I'm happy to say yes. It's in my community. Blah blah. Noticeable change from our interaction pre-event when they showed up and had no idea who we are to after when like the audio, 110 people showed up. The engagement was awesome. The vibe and the buzz in the room was awesome. Like afterwards they were like, oh, this was so fun. And so just like, it made me feel awesome. Just like having somebody show up at the beginning, not know who you are and what you're doing. And then feeling like the feeling of your brand post-event. Kim's already connected me to one of her VPs. We're going to do an event in Boston, so it helped me grow my network in the Texas area, which is awesome. So
awesome, yeah. There's a lot of great tech leaders here, and Kim and I used to work together at AMD.
Okay,
she was the chief of staff to the CMO, and I was the chief of staff to the COO. Nice. And so we were both in the sort of grunt work strategy world for a while there. And even there was a time when if you Googled me, Kim's face showed up. I'm not sure why, but that happened for a little bit. Now I think it's properly me and properly her, but for a while they sort of mixed us up a little bit.
Sorry to hijack your own podcast, but this is what I do.
She
had so it's just the last thing on Kim. So her name's Kim Storin. She's a CMO at a company called Zayo Group. They're a $2 billion telecom infrastructure type of company. Not in my wheelhouse, so I'm probably not describing it right, but they do some serious stuff. And she had the most quotable line of the event, which is I did a panel where I was interviewing these three CMOs talking about just lessons as a CMO. One of her lines that really hit that I saw all over social media was, if the company is in the red, marketing can never be in the green.
Oh.
And meaning like if the company is not hitting company goals, you can't be parading around the company with your like marketing metrics, right? Because that is a telltale sign of like, well, hold on, then marketing is clearly not, something is wonky. Marketing is not driving real business results. And I think that was a nice little pithy one-liner that a lot of people related to about the importance of aligning marketing to company goals.
Oh, love that. That's a great line. Yeah, Kim is really sharp. I had her on the podcast I don't know, a few months ago, and she was great. I had Megan as well. Megan and I live in the same little community. Our boys are best friends, like with another group of like 7 or 8 like football player boys. Nice. So we spend a lot of time together.
Oh my gosh, what a dream to have parent friends and they actually understand what you do as a CMO.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of both, right? Like there's the side you were talking about your kids being, more 7-5 age. There is something like I always grew up where my best friends were my parents' best friends' kids, or I don't know which came first, but and it's the same thing here. Except when I first got here, I was like, "Am I the only working mom? Like, am I surrounded by stay-at-homes and I look like the slacker who's never at like the the class party.
Yeah, the slacker, right.
Yeah. And then the more I've learned, like one, I think more I've gone back to work, but then I've sort of found, and I'm like, oh, there's actually a bunch of us. And so, yeah, it's nice that Megan and I sort of live the same life.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's good.
It makes the small talk easier around, family events.
Yeah. You can talk personally, talk professionally, talk whatever you want, right?
Exactly.
Very cool. Okay. Well, let's get on you. We're so glad you're here. In 3 sentences, sum up your career journey.
I went from PR intern to CMO in about 10 years. Mostly worked in B2B tech startups and SaaS. And now I run a community of B2B marketers. I basically started writing about marketing as I was doing it, built a following online. And today, unintentionally, that has turned into a business, and that's my full-time job.
Pretty awesome. That was pretty good, succinct.
Yeah, it was like maybe 4.5 sentences, but I figured it still it would achieve the goal,
Well, last time we did it was the first time we'd ever. So you're the second podcast recording where I've asked the question instead of like, tell me your journey, I said in 3 sentences. And last time she did an awesome job, my guest, but she was like, I could tell she's like picking every word and, but, just trying to make sure I don't want to go over my 3 sentences.
Yeah.
She did awesome. But it was like, yeah, that's a tough challenge to put it in 3, put 20 years or whatever in 3 sentences.
I was going to say like a short guy, bald, LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I passed.
That's funny. Okay, so speaking of LinkedIn, you did a post recently about being passed over for VP of marketing roles before landing where you landed. Now, really quick, PR intern to CMO in 10 years is a pretty fast path. So I'm guessing the VP of marketing happened in those 10 years or on a separate path somewhere.
Yeah. So it did, and I think the big reveal there is actually I joined a company where I think the only reason that was possible for me was I joined a company as the first marketing hire when the company had 10 employees, and the company was like a rocket ship startup. And so the company went from 10 people when I joined to 300 people 4 years later. And so I was able to grow my career in marketing like as fast as the company was growing. And so I was like hired as first marketing person. They wanted to bring in a more experienced marketing person over me, because of their investors and their board and their own ambitions. And, I didn't have experience. And then that kind of just kept coming back to me and becoming the guy. And they were like, well, I guess you kind of are the VP of marketing here. And then, and so that was how that happened. But I think it was, it's less about the time and more like I just happened to join a company where it was the right time in my life. It was the right company in my life. I came on as a hungry, kind of scrappy, do-it-all marketer. And I was able to like, hey, you're doing really good in marketing. Do you want to hire, you get to hire people now, says the CEO. Okay, you're going to hire one person. Let's prove out that they can work and report. Okay, now let's hire 1. Let's hire 3. Now we have a team of 20, 30 marketers by the end. And so it just was really trial by fire and learning on the job. I also worked, it was an early stage company. It wasn't like I was brought in to be CMO of, a 2,000 person company based on my 20 years of experience. So I was able to ride the wave and grow as a company was growing. I got hired over to no fault of my own. It just is like, this is how, they didn't realize that I was going to be the marketing leader. And each time I kind of took it in stride because I was like, sure, I don't know if I'm ready or want this anyway. And so if I have someone to, I always kind of would liken it to like weightlifting where like, I felt like I'm doing everything at this startup. I got, 315 on the bar. And now all of a sudden we brought in a real VP who has much more experience, and I can just kind of go back to the niche the lane that I'm good at, which is like brand and storytelling and product marketing. And now I'm just repping 135 and it felt amazing. And so I kind of had like 2 or 3 cycles of that before it was eventually my job to have at the company.
Oh, that's awesome. I want to go back to talk about some of the lessons you figure out there. But in that process, and I got to think that you've experienced it, if you've done primarily the startup world as you've kind of grown through marketing, this whole concept of sharing your Legos, I had to learn in a startup world about, as the company gets bigger, as the company's scaling, you can't be the guy who does all of it. So as you bring in people, you have to like actually give away your responsibilities.
I have a story about that. I was the youngest exec at the company. And I'm in the management meetings. Everybody knows it's my first time. That's okay. I wasn't trying to hide it. I took on the advice. And the VP of product, who was maybe 10 or 15 years older than me, really an advocate of mine, my peer, I ran marketing, he ran product. He pulled me aside one day and he's like, hey, He's like, "Hey, can I talk to you a second? Like unsolicited advice." I'm like, "Sure, dude. Do you know everything? Tell me." He's like, "You don't have to do everything yourself." And I was like, yeah, no, this is like, I own marketing. He's like, no. He's like, as you learn the great executives as you go, like you're the general manager, you're the coach, you're moving pieces across the board. He's like, they don't care if you hired an intern to do it, if you hired an agency to do it, if you spent your budget to do it, or if you did it yourself. The company, the CEO, the board, whoever, they care that we achieve the goal. And you will get credit for achieving that goal so long as you're the person running the team. It doesn't matter who necessarily did it. And you need to now scale with this company. So you can't be in the weeds. You can't be doing this. You have to know where your strengths are and you can spend more or less time there. And that was my first kind of like cold water splash in the face moment where like I had to realize, oh yeah, you can only you know all this stuff coming in. It's like being a parent, right? All the things your parents used to lecture you about, then you have your own kids. You're like, oh, they were right, I guess. But you have to live through it on your own. And so I've read all the articles in the world that said how different being an individual contributor is than being like an executive and a team leader. But it wasn't until actually having to do that I felt that firsthand. And so that was a liberating conversation for me to realize like, hey, you gotta let go. Like your job is to manage this whole thing, but you can't possibly survive in this job if you're going to be trying to like edit every line of copy, approve every landing page and email before it goes out. It's just, you're not going to survive that way. And so you got to be able to let go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a hard one when you've been, I think one, when you're either growing so fast with the company, or two, in your own career. Like I remember when I was at Rackspace, I was getting promoted. I was leaving Rackspace. That's what it was. I was transitioning from VP at Rackspace to my first CMO gig. And my old CMO tells me, she's like, well, the first thing you need to do is hire great leaders.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. But I mean, I got to get my arms on the business first. She was like, yes, but she was like, just know that like you're great leaders. And all I could first think, because I was transitioning out of sort of more player coach to more of a coach role, and to realize that like, oh, I actually need to not about let go, but I felt like a lazy CMO if somehow I wasn't doing the physical lifting,
Absolutely.
And sometimes I'll even tell my team, I can tell I like torture them with like little questions, not always, but like on some things. And then sometimes, and I realize it's driving them crazy, but for me, I'm like, I don't want them to think that they're in these trenches alone.
Right.
I want them to feel that I have their back and I'm with them. But in the process, they probably also just want to do the job without me.
Yeah, but it is a weird balance though, because I've been on the other side of it too. And so like I've had a CMO who was my boss, and candidly, this person had no trust in the locker room, so to say, because the person was so far removed from it was so obvious that they hadn't done this job in a while and were not like sharp in their craft. And so like there is some balance of like you need to let go and you need to manage the team. But I do think I think the great CMOs, and I've talked a lot, I've done this podcast that I've had for 10 years. I've been interviewing CMOs. I've probably interviewed 300 B2B CMOs. All the top performing ones are still in the weeds in some way to stay sharp. They might not be micromanaging their team, but they're sharp in some way. And I think that matters. Like it's like in, sports where the coach has had to play the game and that coach has a lot more trust and credibility. So I think that matters. But so in my example, one of the things that I realized, the reason I was holding on so tight is because I didn't have the right team. And that is oftentimes the source of that's the root cause. Like, is it that Dave's a micromanager? Is it that he feels like his ego has to do everything himself? No, he can't let go because he actually he's done a poor job in hiring and he doesn't have the right mix or the right people on the team. And so you can't truly be in that role. And so it wasn't until I went to another company when I left Drift and I went to Privy, and the CEO basically gave me a blank slate to restart with marketing and build the team that I wanted. And it was the first time in my career that I had a network and I had a brand. And so I took a new CMO job and I got to basically pick people to bring to come with me. And I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. And so from right out of the gate, I hired 2 people who were truly A players. And man, 3 months into that company, I was like, this just feels different because my stress level is way different because I feel like I truly hired 2 people who are better than me and are smarter than me in each of these areas. And holy smokes, look at what this frees me up to recruit. This frees me up to have time with strategy. This frees me up to have time with the other execs and functional leaders across the company. And so that is often the root cause. And I used to roll my eyes at, it's all about the people. It's all about the people. But if you ever built a team before, it really is all about the people. And another common trait of all these CMOs that I talk to they spend 80% of their time recruiting. That is the job.
Yeah,
Like
it is.
always recruiting, LinkedIn, taking phone calls, meeting people, because they know that is the number one like currency that they have in their toolkit, right?
Yeah. Even if we don't call it all recruiting, sometimes it's like, I just think this might be an area I need to have a pipeline. Yeah.
Sure.
Like, and I just need to know more people.
Well,
in because
you
it might
learn
replace this function one day.
you learn so much, and so even if you're not actively hiring, right, your partner team kind of is not really what you need it to be. And if you have a friend, your friend Megan, the person who runs her partner team is amazing. You're gonna do a call with her, not to recruit her because Megan would then have a problem because you're friends,
Yeah.
but because sometimes I found that you need to interview people to know what you should even be looking for in the first place, right? And so you just need to pattern match and get out there and talk to more people. Oh, okay, yeah, actually, we're not doing it so bad. I talked to a bunch of people who are doing it this way. We're good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, the pattern matching is important. And sometimes I'm like, I don't really have a role, but I'd love to pick your brain about what good looks like so I know what to expect out of this function.
Or to be interviewing, something I've realized a lot is like you need to start interviewing for roles to sometimes realize what you need. Like I talked to 20 people and I realized that like, yeah, actually, no, I'm thinking about this role wrong. We actually need this person, and we kind of got to like pause this and restart what we're looking for.
Yeah, you can definitely reframe, rescope. And I always say, I like when I'm setting an org structure, I always try to set it on strategy and business objective first, humans second. But sometimes when you also look, you're like, oh, but this person has certain gifts here. I may need to kind of make an adjustment here to tap into that gift while still solving the business strategy.
Yeah.
So there's a little
I wish you gotta have you come on my podcast now, because like that is a thing. Like you have to know the ingredients are always going to be different based on your, the company's goals, the time horizon, the budget, the resources, who you have. But that's what's fun about the job is like mixing and matching those pieces. And like, I kind of got this person, but I might move her over here because we're trying to do this way. Like then I learned like, oh, that becomes the fun part about leading a team. Maybe I'm not writing all the copy anymore, but I get to be the tastemaker of sorts with the team.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, cool. Yeah, that's the fun part. Okay, I want to go back to your role of kind of like growing with the company, getting passed over, but then also kind of ultimately getting it at the end. How do you as you go? It sounded like probably in hindsight, you were very level-headed through it. You're like, yeah, of course, this person knows more. Yeah, whatever.
In hindsight.
But in reality, in the moment, I assume there was some ego, some pride that kind of gets in the way there. How do you stay motivated, productive if you're getting either passed over or people assume that there's somebody else smarter out there or better out there or more experienced? How do you stay focused?
Well, it's nice to sit here years later and say that I was calm and cool and collected. I think, well, I definitely, I kept my ego in check, at least at work, but for sure, personally. And I think this is important. I think also people don't realize about leader. If you want to be a leader at a company, you can't be huffing and puffing and your team seeing you roll your eyes in meetings. Like you got to be able to like put a stoic face on for the company. And so like internally, I was still committed to the team, but externally, I was, my wife. We've had, we talk about work all the time. She knows I was pissed.
Yeah.
But I also tried to like. I think the stack of beliefs was like, regardless of my role, I believe in the company. The company's doing really well. I would be silly to like not attach my wagon to not stay attached to this company because this is the right point in my career. And I think you always got to be looking at your career from like a higher level and saying like, yeah, I could leave right now, but is that the right thing? No, the company's doing awesome. There's a lot to learn. Like the rate of learning when a company's growing this fast is really high. So I'm going to stay here. Also candidly, like I was broke. Like I hadn't made any money yet. And so like I had to
startup. So you're probably assuming the exit at some point, or
right, which is like that's another nonsense belief that we could talk about. But I was an early employee. I had some good equity in the company, and I wanted to like the company was backed by tier 1 Sequoia investors, and we're connected. I'm flying out to California and we're meeting with like the CMO of Facebook and the CMO of Palo Alto Networks, and we're meeting with the best people. Like it was the possibility of like, I think this company's going to have an exit, and it would be silly for me to like, okay, I got some skin in the game now. But then there's also the learning and the access to people that I would have because I was at the company. And so I kind of took those three things into account and said, all right, yeah, it's worth it for me. And then also like each time I was pretty burnt out. It's, the job is a stressful job every 1 to 2 years. And so like there was a couple times where I was able to just look at it and say, I can remember one time in particular where my first kid was just born. I was, sleeping 2 hours a night going to work. I'm like, yeah, someone else getting yelled at for running marketing, like not the worst thing. And so I was able to look at it as like, at this point in my life, is it okay? And then ultimately, I'm a sucker for like personal development, self-development. And there's a guy called Jim Rohn who was Tony Robbins, the Tony Robbins before Tony Robbins. And Jim Rohn has a line that he says, like, which has always stuck out to me when first time that I heard it was, learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. If you work hard on your job, you can make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you'll make a fortune. And so I kind of read that as like, you know what, this is one company. No matter how well or not well this company does, like I'm not going to work here forever. This is about my personal experience. And so what can I get out of this 2, 3, 4, 5-year stint? Like this is my MBA. This is my career education opportunity. That alone is worth it. And so I'm going to take that. And man, look at today, like all the things that are possible in my life today came from that 3 or 4 year stretch of like working at Drift where my career really jumped off. And so I think you just got to have that look of like, I'm not going to work at this company forever anyway. How can I use this as an opportunity to learn? What can I get out of this? Even at a Privy, when I went there, I joined that company December 2019, had all these plans to hire and a budget and everything, March 2020, just poof, it all went away. Yep. And it would have been easy to be like, oh man, I was going to be this cool CMO and spend all this money and do all this cool stuff. And they froze the budget. Instead, it was like, well, okay, what can we do with no budget? Great learning opportunity. How can we turn this into a positive situation?
Yeah. Learn to lead through uncertainty like 2020. Learn to, all the other lessons you get, the relationships you build, the networks you build. So that's pretty awesome. I love that. I think that's very wise. Again, probably maybe wiser in hindsight than in the moment, but I hope that you're able to exhibit some of that. But there was a comment you made about like, I think you used the word stoic, but basically kind of saying straight face in front of your team, like not rolling your eyes and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. What do you think the balance is in the world of, I won't say I'm pretty direct, but I'm pretty consistently the same person, whether I'm talking to you or I'm talking to my team or I'm talking to my family or I'm talking to my
Me too.
So how do you lead with authenticity and yet also be a professional in the room that puts your sort of stoic hat on? Like you want to be relatable, but you also want to be a leader. You want to be all those things at one time. It's one of those things I watch like myself all the time. I can tell that where I didn't know it when I was, 10 years ago, people try to rush their careers along. I'm like, oh, it's not the hard skill development that takes time. It's the soft skill. Yeah. That takes time.
Yeah. Well, you're asking the smart question because there is a lot of nuance. Like it is interesting, right? Because you need to be a leader for the company, but at the same time, if you're like too on message, you're not relatable to your team. Like if they know Kelly's just going to like repeat whatever her boss, the CEO says, like you're not a real person. And so I think for me, it was like, I'm obviously learning about myself every day as we go. I think for a while I did try to be not like a caricature, almost like a character. Like it was this tough line to be like, and I was immature. I just didn't know, you need experience. Imagine that. But, it's like I'm in a private conversation with the CEO and he's telling me like, yeah, we're trying to sell the company and this is going to be crazy. And then like, I got to go walk back into my team meeting and like pretend to like focus on the webinar we're doing tomorrow. Like that stuff is hard, but I believe in, so first of all, as a person and just overall, like brand, one of the best books I ever read on branding is called Let My People Go Surfing by the founder of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard. And in the book, he talks about Patagonia as a brand, which I don't know if Patagonia is a big brand down south, but here it is. Up here it is.
My ski coats as if like it's actually cold. It's not, but we wear the costume during the winter regardless.
All right. Yeah. I got a story for you about cowboy boots later.
We wear those too.
Yeah. It's what he says is way easier to be authentic and true than it is to be like build a fictional character. So he was like, we've always been we never had like a mascot or an icon or something for our brand because we want our brand to be real and authentic because it is much easier to tell the truth than it is to like, tell a lie, or not a lie, but like portray a character, right? Like if you're portraying the character that is Kelly or Dave, the CMO, that's very hard, because eventually you're going to be a real person, and you're going to be in a moment of emotional, something's going to happen in your personal life, or something's going to be happening at work, where all of a sudden you're cracked and, oh my God, I've never seen her like that. Where if you're just you, then you don't have to roll into work. You are you, right? You don't have to fake or try to be someone else. And so I think that is really important, because we've all worked for people who are like just in corporate manager mode. And I want to just shake them and be like, what are you really like? Like, yeah. Tell me, that is how you lead people, by being relatable and authentic and real to them.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, though, you report to the CEO and the board, and you have a duty as an executive. Those are your peers. Those are your colleagues. Those are your teammates. And so you have to be cognizant about like what you're sharing, and understanding like, yeah, maybe that is a conversation that I should just keep inside of the management room. It doesn't change who you are as a person, but there's just things you can be authentic about and be like, yeah, there's some other stuff going, like you can say to the marketing team like, yeah, well, hey, the real reason we can't do that right now is there's some other stuff going on inside the company. It's going to come out like in a month or two. It's not a big deal. Like you can be authentic and tell the truth without having to like, share secrets in and out of school, right? I think that is important. But my other lesson is just like, I've seen people that want to be managers, they gossip at work. They're acting like the 23-year-old employee in Slack, and, gossiping about someone else, or, talking trash about somebody else. And I just know that if you want to be a manager and you want to be a leader, you got to let those things go. And so you can be authentic, but you can't do those things. And you have to model like, you're a public facing figure inside of the company. You're the one standing up in front of the company at all hands and town halls. We've all worked at companies where like the VP of sales, sorry to say that it's sales, I'll use a different role. The VP of engineering, had too many drinks at the holiday party and made a fool of themselves. And that one moment now is all everyone can think about when that person is speaking in front of the company. That person has now lost all credibility, because everybody knows what happened. And so you can't do that. You have to be real. And I think it's much easier to be real, but real and understand, yeah, my role in this team is coach, is manager. I'm going to be real, but I'm also in charge. And because I'm in charge, there's a set of like things that I have to do. My boss is the CEO. My peers are the other execs on the management team. And so there's stuff that I'm not going to be able to share, but in times of uncertainty, I'll share as much as I can that it makes sense. But it's not my job to tell you everything, but I'm going to help you do your job. And I'm going to be the authentic version of myself that I know how to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think all of that is spot on. It made me think about a few different things. One, you mentioned the gossip and sort of like behavior that happens. What's interesting that I've been observing kind of the last few years is, and maybe it's because I'm more senior over the last 4 years than maybe before, but because I'm not in an office 5 days a week like I was back then, I feel like some of that is cut back some.
Yeah.
But it also sometimes feels like that's, at least maybe more junior employees, but folks' way of building community with each other is through shared gossip, shared toxicity, whatever it happens to be.
Oh, yeah. On the same side, one of the best times of my life was like being 24, 25, working in an office.
Oh, yeah.
So like I've been on both sides. I'm just saying, as the manager, if you want to be that, you got to know you got to let it go. But that was a great time of my life. Of course, I've been talking trash in company IMs for, since I was graduated. Like.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't hold it against anyone, because I was obviously the exact way. What I was noticing though is I wonder sometimes if the lack of, not to change into remote versus office work, but the lack of office work, which means the lack of sort of that like offline camaraderie, that water cooler lunch, coffee break kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I feel like the loyalty to companies has disappeared as well. Like I feel like people hop faster now than they did probably pre-2020. And I don't know if it's because the market's been uncertain, or if it's because they don't have that sort of vested kind of human heart interest in their company, because they don't have those like physical 3-dimensional personal relationships on a daily basis that they used to. And so now you can just sort of quit a Zoom. You're not quitting like a place you go every day and a place you every day and the people you do life with.
Yeah, no, it's easier. I had a remote employee just send me an email one day and said, I'm done working here. And I was like, okay.
That would have been a lot harder face to face, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, it would have sucked for both of us, but that's fine. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there's some level of it's not like you're anonymous, but it feels less personal. And so it's easier just like, this is like a digital avatar and I'm just going to leave you now. Yeah, there's definitely, my company is remote, but I am a big believer in person. And I often think about, I'm not sure if I would have been able to do the things that I did when I was at Drift in particular, if we weren't in person.
Yeah, for sure. But it's funny. This is a sidebar. It's sort of the opposite. When I was younger in my career, I think I've become sort of more, I don't know if you call it consistent or authentic as I've gotten older. At work, I would go and I had this mindset of sort of like this, probably when I was like middle management, let's call it director, VP kind of levels before I became probably a CMO. And I would have this mindset of like, I need to be a professional. I need to run things. I'm in charge of this team. I've got a number. I've got to hit. I've got to do whatever. And so I think I was probably the same person, but I was very hard charging. And I would get home, and I don't know if you remember the movie Over the Top. Do you remember? Is that what it was called? Yeah, Over the Top. It was a arm wrestling movie with Sylvester Stallone back in like the 90s.
I don't know.
It's awesome. Go watch it.
All right.
I'm sure it's on some service somewhere.
Right.
Or it's probably on TBS on like Saturdays. It's there. But anyways, in this movie, he was this arm wrestler, but he was like this super, super nice guy. But he would talk about that when he got in the ring to like arm wrestle, he would like turn his hat around and he like became like a different person. It's like his Jekyll the Hyde kind of moment. And he became an animal on the arm wrestling ring. And I used to think when I'd pull into my house at night, because I was so, and it wasn't driven by my husband, it was driven by my own self. I wanted to be the good, like I won't say submissive, but I wanted to be the good, like kind of supportive, understanding, more meek wife when I walked in as coming out of being like the boss at work. And so I did this like sort of hat turn moment, and I would I'd go in and I'd be like, hey honey, what would you like for dinner? And I would set the table and I would do whatever. And finally one day he was like, you don't have to like turn off that when you come in the house. Like, it's okay to be like, you can be a badass at home too. You don't have to like just do it at work and then walk in here and have to like tiptoe around like my ego. Like, I'm totally fine. I'd be like,
if your team saw you, they'd be like, who is that woman?
We want to work for her. She's great.
Who's that? Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I think that you've gotten older, and I think like anything in life, work or whatever. I mean, my wife and I talk about this all the time. Like, each year that evolves for me, I feel more comfortable in my own skin as a person. Yeah. Obviously. Yeah, look at old people. They don't care. They don't care what you think about them, right? And so I'll be there, and I'm getting there every single year. And I think the same is true for work. And so you're more comfortable being yourself at work now than you were 10 years ago. Makes total sense.
Yeah. And maybe
by the way, you're really good at hosting this podcast.
Thank you.
Very conversational. So
well, thanks.
Not everyone is good at this. Okay, I'm talking to Dave Gerhardt. I got the next question, Dave. That's very good. Yeah.
We can do that approach if that's easier.
No, this is working for me. Thank you.
Well, good. Well, we'll return the favor. I'll jump on your podcast sometime and we'll chit chat over there.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. What else did we talk about? There was something else you said about the long game. I think there was or that's what I heard. There was a comment you made about like sort of thinking like I'm making myself better as a person. I think, probably your Jim Rohn quote, which by the way, I think Jim Rohn, I remember the name. He had like a quote that got him in massive trouble, didn't he? Like,
I mean, who didn't? Which one of the male self-advice gurus did not get canceled? So yeah, right.
I feel like he got canceled somewhere in there.
Yeah, please don't take that. Please don't put me with that. Like, I'm just,
When you said Jim Rohn, I was like, ooh, I remember there was a quote that was great.
Awesome.
And I also remember some great quotes. Awesome. Anyway, but I love this idea.
I'm so happy to reference him on your podcast.
The good news, I can't remember the quote or the context, so I could be completely off base. I'm not like talking about like, I don't know who the bad ones are these times. But you mentioned, it made me think of the long game though. And that's so hard to do in the moment. It's so hard to not be thinking, I'm walking into this exec meeting, or I've got this prep or this big project launch or whatever, and be thinking, all this is going to make me better or stronger or a better leader or a better marketer or a better friend or whatever it is for this long game. And like this job doesn't define me. I do. Like that is, I'm just blown away by that. I think there's a ton of, I don't know, I guess EQ maybe that comes with that. Or maybe there's like it's so hard when you're in the moment. Like I've had moments where I'm like, I just want to get promoted like today. I can't wait a month. I can't wait 6 months.
Yeah.
Now it seems silly in hindsight, but at the time it felt so. And so how do you
I have a couple of reasons for that, I think. One of them is, I think I'm 37. The era of people that are my age, like we're working now, we've grown up in a different era. Basically everybody that I know has been laid off in the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh yeah.
In some form or another. And so I think like it's just different where like my dad, my mom, they both worked at the same company for 40 years.
Yeah.
And that's just how that generation was. I think it's a different generation. And so I think like by nature, I came out thinking about myself as the company. Like I am the portfolio, like I'm building this portfolio of experiences. Like there's no way I'm going to work at a company. Even if I worked at a company for 10 years, that's still not my whole career.
Yeah.
And so like I've kind of always thought of myself as like an athlete, and you're a free, you're playing for this team now, but ultimately like you might play for multiple teams in your career. The other side of that is like when I was at Drift, as an example, I think if you do good work, especially today, people find you and you find more opportunities. And so we live in the connected era, the digital, social media era. When I was at Drift, the company was my life for a long time. And the company got a lot of recognition for building an awesome brand, for the marketing that we were doing. And, at times of darkness where I was like maybe burnt out or frustrated, I get a message from a CEO of a company that I respect, and is like, hey, do you ever do any consulting? I was like, wait, what? Yeah, can I pay you for an hour of your time? I was like, absolutely, yeah, yes, you can. And so, okay, boom, then that comes in. Another founder reaches out, founder of a company that I expect, hey, if you're ever not happy and you want to leave sometime. And so I started to see like, and this also was because of being on LinkedIn and writing and having a podcast and doing the marketing. And so I started to see more opportunities for myself that, hey, I don't have to be at this company for the rest of my life. And so I think when you see that, when you get inbound things, you start to realize like, oh yeah, I am building this kind of like lifetime portfolio. And so that was a very important perspective, I think, for me to realize that like I'm doing good work at this company right now, but I am not this company. My identity is not tied to this company. My brand is not 100% tied to this company. There are other opportunities out there. And for it's almost like being in a relationship. Like, you dated somebody and you can move on and go find another relationship. And there's going to be people who that was a 4 or 5 year stretch in your career, but 20, 30 years from now, there's going to be multiple stories in between. So that was an eye-opening thing for me, was to get inbound requests of like people and companies who wanted to work with me outside of my current company. Because those people don't care. They don't care that you're happily employed right now. They're trying to build their team. They want to find the next best person. And so, hey, Kelly, like you're doing an awesome job. By the way, just so you know, if you ever want to get a coffee sometime and you get a coffee and you meet with someone and they tell you about this whole other world of things that are open to you, you start to think a little bit bigger than like the one company. That plus there is no loyalty anymore because, it just there's up and downs and job tenures are shorter and you're going to get laid off despite the company telling you that they're your family and blah, blah, blah. That's not your family. You're going to get laid off. And so you got to just take all that in. And I think I've just been able to build a longer term view of my career.
Yeah. I think that fearlessness is pretty powerful because you're right. Like my mom taught school at the same place for 30 some odd years or whatever. My dad worked at a bank for however many.
Yeah. My mom was a teacher for 42 years. You know what they gave her when she retired? A wooden chair.
Did she keep it?
Yeah, she loves it. She's proud of it.
It's 42 years of chair right there.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, when I even noticed it in 2020, when companies, mine included, started having some layoffs because of this like uncertainty around COVID, I noticed that anybody that was hired since, say, 2009, so that were in the first 10 or 11 years of their career, had never seen a layoff, right? It was like boom economy from 2009.
That was me. That was 2009, my first job out of school. Yep.
Exactly. So 2020 was like this wake-up call. And once you realize it, like, oh, wait. And then now you've gone through it in 22 and 23, and you're like, oh, okay, this is just normal. Like, there's a fearlessness. I used to always say, if this thing doesn't work out, I can just always wait tables. Like I was really good at it. I made a lot of money. There's a ton of cash in waiting tables. There's a lot of job security. So I'm like, I can always do that. I guess now it's probably like, I can always consult. Like that's the.
I couldn't agree. So that thing that you said, I think is so important. And so I think like, even if you want to rise in your career to be a marketing leader, everyone that comes up through marketing had some skill, some like core skill, like as an individual contributor. Maybe it was PR, maybe it was product marketing. Like, I think of it, I've always thought of myself as a marketer first. And so if everything went to zero and I got laid off, I would start a copywriting business, or I'd start a positioning. I have a skill set. And so beyond that,
great.
like, what is your skill set as a marketer? Your skill set is not just team manager, but like maybe you're a product marketer, maybe you make videos. Like, I think that I can always be in demand, and so I do have that fearlessness. This is a revelation. I've never thought of this right now. This is like therapy, Kelly.
This is perfect. This is what we're doing.
But that is another thing. I think a part of my fearlessness is not just some like, white male in tech arrogance that like I'm going to get a job no matter what happens. But it is like, I feel like I'm a crafts person of some kind and I'm good at my work. And if everything went to zero, like I think I'm damn good at marketing, and I would find a way to like create a business and a life from that.
There you go. Yeah.
And so what is your thing, right? So people that are listening to this, like what is your thing? Like what can you fall back on? Maybe you're a secret video producer, or you're amazing at positioning or copywriting or product marketing. Like I think just having that in the back of your head is like, yeah, if everything goes to zero, if my company goes to zero, like I'm not going to be searching for a job. I'm going to build something.
Yeah.
And I think that's my default state.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and the days of networking, like used to be, I hate network. I'm going to go stand at a happy hour and have small talk with people I'll never see again. Like, I don't think that's what networking is anymore. There's some of that, but a lot of it is like through your social community, like your social media communities and your content. Like all of it is about building your credibility in that space. So to your point about like, hey, figure out what you not only what you're good at, what's your craft, but also like, what do you love doing? Because you'll be great at that, and write about it, post about it. Well,
there's also like there's a lot of people that when I was like writing a lot on LinkedIn and growing a following on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people that this was maybe 7-8 years ago, and not as many people were doing it now, and so it's much more of like a taboo kind of thing. Oh, that's that guy Dave from Drift. He's always posting on LinkedIn. Well, today, LinkedIn is just a social network, right? Nobody's going to say like, oh yeah, who's that lady Kelly? She's always tweeting on Twitter. It's like, well, that's what the thing is for. That's what it's for. And this is what LinkedIn is for now. It's changed. Mm-hmm. But because I've been on LinkedIn for a while, and because I have a lot of followers there, I have a lot of opportunities that come my way. And that wasn't, I didn't set out for that to happen. But like, if you can do that, you can build a following. Like if Exit 5 went to zero tomorrow, everything, we went out of business, I would go to LinkedIn and I would say, hey, I'm a free agent. What's out there for me?
And your direct messages would fill up like that.
I would have more opportunities than I know what to do with, right? And so that is true if you're a videographer and you have 6,000 followers on LinkedIn and you post your work on LinkedIn and people know that you exist to make videos beyond your company, the same thing can happen. And so I think LinkedIn used to be like this digital Rolodex where like I only connect. I finally met Kelly. I'm going to send her a connection request because I just met her at the in-person sales meeting after. Yep. Where now it is like a social network that is basically centered around business content. And so if you're a knowledge worker of any kind and you write or create or make videos or do podcasts or whatever, put on events, sharing that stuff, sharing what you're doing on LinkedIn can be your kind of fallback plan from your career can be evergreen because you're making video, you're the video producer at Demand Base and you end up losing your job for some reason, but people know your work is good. You're going to get your next gig through LinkedIn. And so that's been another piece of my fearlessness, I think.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's great. And I think that's great advice for people that are listening, up and coming. So with that, I think we're probably getting close to time. So I'll start to wrap us up. Before I do, what is one fun fact about you that maybe people don't know, or maybe some do, but not everyone?
My favorite color is blue.
That's super lame.
Oh man, this is I'm like the least fun fact person in the world. I'm like, I like to do marketing. I like to work out. I play golf.
Play golf? Are you any good?
Yeah, I've gotten pretty good. I'm a scratch golfer now.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah. So that's a fun fact.
Yeah, you have to own your own business and work less to be really good at golf, I found. But there's like those two forces are competing. But I've been playing my whole life.
Oh, okay.
And I just recently got a great coach, and I'm trying to pass it on to my kids because it's like one of the few sports and activities that we can play together forever.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
So I'll give you a fun fact. No, a fun fact about me is that unlike a lot of folks in tech right now, I live in Vermont, which is a state in the United States in the Northeast.
Right.
It's way up there. in the Northeast. I lived in Boston for 15, 20 years. And 4 years ago, my wife and we moved our family and our kids up to Vermont.
Wow.
And I had a VC at the time ask me, so what are you going to do? How are you going to have a network? And they didn't understand the power of social media and content. But that's where I am right now. I'm in Vermont.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've been to Vermont only. I went to grad school in Boston, so I went to Stowe, I think, and went skiing.
Sure. Where did you go to grad school in Boston?
I went to Harvard Business School.
Okay, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you've heard. It looks like you guest lectured there, actually.
I did, yeah. So this woman, Julia Austin, was a teacher there, professor there in the business school, and she was an early investor and advisor at Drift, and they needed someone to come in and speak. And I got the call up really early in my career to go and talk, and I was so nervous, and I gave like this really tactical, practical talk, and it went over really well. And students were like, we're kind of used to people coming in here and not being in the weeds, and I'm talking about post on this channel this time of day, and here's the I went back 8 years in a row, and it became like a real thing. It was like a pillar of my year. And then there was even a time a couple of years ago where like I was interviewing for a job, like a full-time teaching job there, which would have been crazy. So I wasn't smart enough to go there for business school, so I just put it on my LinkedIn profile so people like you can be like, all right, this guy's okay.
That's cool. Yeah. I would love to go back and guest lecture. I've done a case. I presented a case once. That was all I did when I was at AMD. So it's a super fun way of presenting. Like I think we in tech, it's very much like this, like you do a webinar, right? You present for 45 minutes, slides. And she coached me really early. She's like, no, these lectures, they need to be case style. Like, you present a slide and you ask a question to the room. Yeah.
And that was so fun because you don't know what people are going to ask. And like a couple minutes in, you're like actually having conversations with people. And so it was super fun, a super fun way to do it. What is your fun fact, by the way? When someone asks like, what's a fun fact about you? What is Kelly's answer?
Oh, that's a good question. No one ever turns it back around on me. I need to have one.
See?
I mean, it's hard. Yeah. I'll give, I guess, one. I was a school bus driver at Texas A&M University. So I went to school. And so I would work on campus. I drove like a 50-foot school bus. So I had to get my commercial driver's license. I drove kids around campus. I worked 4 hours a day, like 5 days a week, and I drove campus. And
That's
so
amazing.
I still, to this day, I'm like, I could sharpen that up and get to drive, I don't know, the football team charter bus if they broke down on the side of the road or something, that would be,
that's a high pressure job. That driving a truck, driving a bus like that is no joke.
Yeah, when I drove the 6 a.m. shift, I drove 6 to 10. Yeah. And it was around town bringing students. And so I just remember being so tired when I would do it. But I loved it. And it paid twice, or I don't know, 2 or 3 times minimum wage, which at the time was $4 or $5.
I have one more question. Who's your favorite Who's your favorite all-time Texas A&M athlete?
Oh, the whole world hates him, though.
Johnny Manziel?
I love Manziel. I mean, he was so fun to watch. He was there 2012, I think-ish.
They hate him now, but you can't. No, they can't take away that. That was an electric period of time to watch football.
Gosh. Yeah, he was electric, and I can see it even now with Marcel Reed, who's our current quarterback, trying to keep the run game moving and all of that. As a quarterback who's got legs, not all quarterbacks do, but Manziel was just the best at it.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Well, and I think he would have been, not to derail this, but he would have been less hated if NIL existed when he was there. The challenge
absolutely.
Is, right? Because his whole thing was that he was taking cash on the side, hiding it in his mattress, didn't have anybody managing it, so he's spending it on all this.
Sure.
And so now he's so he's just kind of hated from that, and I think he ruined his career that way. But man, he was a blast.
It would have been the most social media relevant star today. Today, sure. It would have been prime. Yeah.
Oh, they would have loved him. Yeah. I mean, he just was about 2 or 3, and I think he was probably a driver of changing what the NIL policy.
Sure.
So I'm dealing with it because my son's a junior in high school, wants to play college ball. So we're learning a lot about transfer portal and NIL and all those things and how that works. And anyway, it's a different world than it used to be.
Maybe Demand Base could be a spot, the first NIL tech
sponsor.
The first, SaaS, B2B SaaS sponsor. That'd be sweet.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So if people want to follow you, it sounds like LinkedIn, you mentioned a few times, is probably the right place to follow you. Anywhere else?
You could check us out. We could see what we're doing at exit5.com, and then I'm on LinkedIn.
All right. Exit5.com and Dave Gerhardt on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I love the conversation. This was great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. You're a great host. It was an enjoyable hour. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And everybody, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of the Next Gen CMO podcast.